Hi, Jonathan. Thank you very much for being here. Well, can you maybe first introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, Xavier, it's great to be here. My name is Jonathan Mueller. I'm one of the founders and owners of Ascend Behavior Partners. We provide applied behavior analysis services for children with autism.
Thank you. Now, we worked together for a couple of years. When you project yourself back at the beginning of our relationship, why did you decide to ask for help in the first place? What was the problem?
I think the big thing, we were about 5 or 6 years into the business, and we felt like we had started to stagnate. Growth wasn't coming as easily as we were hoping it would be. Alignment across all our teams was not happening maybe exactly the way that we wanted it to, and we just felt like we had such untapped potential as an organization, and that coincided with getting a new leadership team in place, and kind of getting the right people in the right seats. And we wanted to be and able to work in order to work on the business instead of in the business. We wanted to be participants in leadership and active facilitation and coaching by an outside smart, wise perspective. And we were very fortunate to find you, Xavier.
And now, why an outside perspective? Why not solve these issues internally?
Yeah, there's this expression I think from Jim Collins in Good to Great: confront the brutal facts, but never lose faith. And as an entrepreneur, I think you have to have this fundamental optimism bias about the world, about your organization, and that's good. That's great, right, for building organizations and scaling organizations. But that's when it comes to pulling the veil back on your own business, that can sometimes get in the way. And so, bringing in an outside perspective who could help us ride alongside on our journey and confront those brutal facts, but never lose faith, felt really important to what we were trying to achieve.
All right, thank you. Now, why did you hire me specifically as opposed to any other coach?
We talked to a variety of different folks, including those with domain expertise in our field. And I think the thing that, my partner Will and I liked most about you was what you emphasized about accountability and or both organizational accountability, but also accountability that he and I had as owners and co-owners and co-founders to our teams and to the business. So it wasn't like you were going to come in and say, "All right, team, you've got to go do this." It was like, "Jonathan and Will, you're signing up alongside the rest of the team." And we really liked that approach. But there's this idea that you were going to hold our feet to the fire and help us. Lead very structured, productive conversations about where we wanted to go and how we would get there and how we would know we had gotten there. That made it feel like it was the right relationship. And you spent the right amount of time kind of getting to know the business and us and what we wanted to do. And you understood the importance of mission and vision to this organization, what made us special. So when you picked up on that, even though you weren't, at that point, an outsider to the field, it just felt like a natural fit.
Looking back at since the beginning of our working relationship, um, what have I provided that you value the most?
The most critical thing was accountability. Um, in our both our monthly and quarterly planning sessions, we all kind of debated, beat up ideas around what our priorities were, goals were. We set those goals, and that's great, and that's what a lot of facilitators do. What you then took the next step of doing is saying, "All right, whose name should be on this goal?" Okay, now that your name is on that goal, what does success look like at the end of this quarter? And then, oh, by the way, what does success look like week by week? And you had a great way. We used Mural and an online tool where we literally had to plan out. What does the rest of the quarter look like? What are the tactical activities we were going to do to achieve those highest priority goals? And so I loved that portion of it. Is you held our feet to the fire and you helped us build a culture of holding one another's feet to the fire and accountable to meeting those goals and making sure we were on track week over week and month over month to achieving them.
Now, setting priorities and putting names to priorities and having these conversations, you might argue this is something that any CEO could do for their own company. What is the benefit of working with me to do that?
Yeah, it is true that any CEO should be able to do that. But what I think is a little bit different is bringing an outsider's perspective to gut check some of our assumptions, especially again as entrepreneurs. Will and I fundamentally are builders of organizations, and I think there is a healthy dose of skepticism that you would bring to our priorities. So an example is, we might come out of a strategic planning session, or we might be halfway through it, and we've identified 12 different priorities of things that we need to do. And while it's true that yes, all of those generally are a priority, you help us understand like if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. And so I think providing that mental gut check, the real world gut check, is a critically important uh, part of that. Also, I think it's there's as a CEO and a founder and owner, you have to have some humility knowing that when you are facilitating with your teams are naturally going to look to you and defer to you on what the priorities are. And it was really important to us that we weren't just getting lip service, that everyone wasn't just drinking the Kool-Aid, whether it was around 12 priorities or where we wanted to be, but that we were all bought into where we were headed. And so having you as an outside facilitator helped to make sure everyone's voice was heard, and helped to make sure that this was a journey that we were all on as opposed to just, our journey as founders.
Thank you. That is very clear indeed. Now, in terms of tangible results, what has been the result of working with me?
Well, yeah, I'll start with some of the maybe just X's and O's and the tactical results. We in the past year, we've actually grown by more than by almost 20%. So that means we're serving more kiddos every day, kiddos and families living with autism. We've increased our utilization, our gross margin by a couple percentage points, which is huge. And we've helped to get leaner. This is a tough business, and insurance companies, Medicaid, are really tough to work with. So we are constantly having to get leaner. So we've actually been able to reduce some of our corporate overhead by 25%. And so all of that has meant that, whereas when we first started working with you, we were not profitable. Now we've gotten modestly profitable. We've gotten cash flow positive. So those are the X's and O's. Benefits of and the real world results of having worked with you. I think more importantly, though, there's more of a shared um, mission that we have around the most important things that will move the needle. And it's and some of this is you can say okay, these are the basics, but sometimes you need like to understand the basics. And I think we just keep coming back to what do we need to do every day to make sure we're continuing to attract clients and ensure they're getting the best services possible? What do we need to do to make sure we're attracting and retaining the best staff possible? And then how do we make sure that we're doing all the right things to collect cash for the needed services? And so that kind of like focus and alignment around priorities is super important. I'll say one other thing though. There were a couple folks that you introduced us to along this journey, external to your organization and our organization, that really had a big impact. People authors that wrote books about onboarding, and you helped facilitate a session with him to understand how we improved our onboarding process. You helped set up and facilitate a meeting with one of the biggest home health agencies in the Netherlands, maybe in all of Europe. That was really profound for how we thought about structuring our clinical teams and building pods. So there were a lot of places where you had that nuanced noticing of, oh, here was a need, and I might know someone in my network to help connect with that need, and that felt really powerful.
Thank you. If someone was thinking about working with me, what would you tell them?
Xavier's not going to blow smoke at you. He's going to hold your feet to the fire. um, and um, and it is really important if you're, especially if you're feeling like a little adrift and everything feels like a priority, and you've just been stuck in certain ways of doing things, and or you and your leadership team have felt like you're stuck in certain ways of doing things, then Xavier's going to help with that unsticking. And what's really important is being clear up front about what your expectations are, what your goals are for the business, and then trusting the process. Because the process is, it's not magical. It's not overnight, right? Or it's not even like we're going to see results next week or next month or even in a few months. A lot of this is just the continuous turning of a flywheel, and creating a culture of accountability and meeting goals, et cetera, that then starts to build its own momentum. And so, yeah, trusting that process, and also making sure you're very clear with Xavier about what your own goals and aspirations are is critical.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jonathan.
Thank you, Xavier.